Honkai Star Rail has a problem. And this is a problem that I've been quiet about for a while. You see, this isn't gonna be a video about the blatantly obvious power creep because, come on, we all know it exists. But since Honkai Star Rail in particular is a game that plays itself with next to zero skill expression, how else are they gonna sell characters outside of number increases, right? Anyway, my main problem with the game is the way information is presented. Because I feel like the wrong things are often emphasized and the real juicy parts of the story are often left out for no apparent reason. And if you don't go out of your way to read things or watch channels like mine, you wouldn't know what is really going on or why certain details are actually really significant. Because in my opinion, Honkai Star Rail has the densest, most expansive lore out of every Hoyoverse game. But they never showcase that fact without the player going miles out of their way in order to find it. And that just simply gets on my nerves. Because to be honest with you, I don't play Honkai Star Rail, and neither do you. We watch Honkai Star Rail. And it is because of this that the story needs to be impactful and keep you, the player, engaged. So without further ado, this is Honkai Star Rail's true problem revealed. Okay. So just to prove a point, I'm going to bring up a few things that casual players would be entirely clueless about. I'm going to say a name, and if you don't have a physical reaction to this name, the storytelling has failed you massively. Oswaldo Schneider. I know my longtime audience is probably thinking, not this guy. I'm sorry, we gotta talk about this guy for the people in the back. Remember when Boothill tracked down Aventurine to interrogate him about Oswaldo's whereabouts? Then he's brought up again, and wow, Aventurine and Boothill are friends now? What's going on here? And that's where the information stops. But it just so happens that we got an entire story section in the main story dedicated to both Aventurine and Boothill's pasts. But this guy was never brought up. So he must not be important, right? But he is. He is, in fact, the entire reason why both of their stories are tragic. Oswaldo Schneider is the most influential faceless villain in this entire game that next to no one knows about. But since the game won't tell you, I suppose I'll give you the rundown on who this guy is real quick. Oswaldo is a former Nameless. He left the path of the Trailblaze to work for the IPC, where he would commit crimes against humanity that you aren't ready to hear about. Because I call the Trailblaze the path of meddling in other people's affairs for a reason. But Oswaldo is the opposite of that. He is an active terrorist. Remember when Aventurine was living in the desert with his sister? This is because Oswaldo led an operation on Sigonia 4, Aventurine's planet, to initiate a project called Sigonian Sovereignty to unify all the clans on this primitive planet. But he left out the Catechins and the Avgens and exiled them to the desert. That was Aventurine's clan, by the way, he's an Avgen. This is why Aventurine was living there, forced to bet his life for food against the nearby Catechins that wanted him dead. This is also why Sigonians are stigmatized. Yes, Oswaldo created racism on a galactic level. Remember that little Sparkle interaction? Yeah, that's because of Oswaldo too. But it gets worse. But as time went on, and eventually the Catechins got sick of the Avgens existing, I guess, they planned to wipe them all out. And the Avgens got wind of the plan and begged the IPC Men in Black to help them. And the IPC agreed, and then didn't show up to the ambush, resulting in over 6,000 deaths and 3,000 missing in the annihilation of the Avgen clan. This was all because of one man that the story has failed to tell you about. But it gets worse, because Oswaldo was just getting started. Because, you see, Oswaldo is a really high-ranked member in the IPC. He has the same rank as Diamond, and Diamond is an emanator of the preservation. But again, you wouldn't know this because the story doesn't tell you. So let's talk about Boothill and the travesty that was the injustice done to his backstory, which centers around his homeworld, Aragon Efartial. And brace yourself, because Oswaldo is about to outdo himself. Because, you see, Aragon Efartial was rich in a black ore that the IPC wanted. But they didn't have legal claim to the resources since the planet wasn't like Eurilo 6, and they didn't have them in a pre-existing debt trap. So you want to know what Oswaldo did? He and his gang of IPC terrorists decided to make a game of it. A a lotto, if you will. And whoever was the first to bring him this ore would earn a lavish prize. Oh yeah, and one more thing. Military force is allowed and incentivized. So within a short period of time, this lush and lively planet was reduced to a broken world only populated by a shrinking reservation of survivors from the assault of Oswaldo's forces. Every single person Boot Hill knew and loved perished, including the little girl that was quite possibly his daughter. Now, with all this in mind, does this interaction with Boot Hill and Aventurine feel different? I bet it does. And that is because of the way this story is told and the blatant disregard for what should be established as common knowledge. Yes, if you read the character bios from start to finish, you understand this, but what if you didn't get Boot Hill? You wouldn't know, would you? Nope. You would have no clue about what's actually going on here. If you're like me and you don't like the IPC and you just didn't care enough about Boot Hill to get him, you would be entirely clueless about what's going on here. Yes, we know Jade is evil, everybody knows that. She destroys people's lives for fun, and that's put on center stage. I call her Satan with a pimp hat. But compared to Oswaldo, Jade is just a mildly misguided individual. And remember when I said lotto earlier? That was foreshadowing. Because Oswaldo runs a little thing called the Cosmic Big Lotto, aka the curio that ruins your simulated universe runs. Yes, Oswaldo can hurt you in real life, but for some reason, Hoyo doesn't want to tell you about him directly. He is such an incredible villain. Oswaldo is such an incredible villain that is worthy of all the hate in the universe directed at him. But half the community doesn't even know he exists. And I know that people don't know him because every time I mention Oswaldo in passing, I get so many comments like, "Oh, who is Oswaldo? Who is this guy? He was a nameless? Is he really that bad?" Yes, he is. And by the way, this isn't him. I just used this silhouette guy because he looks evil and authoritative. So stop simping for him. But let's move on. Enough about this guy. Let's talk about the other character we know is being hunted by a Galaxy Ranger. And that would be Evil Ninja Osaru, aka Genius Society number 64, Dr. Primitive. You see, Rappa has been chasing this guy for a long time. In fact, she's not the only one on his tail. Dr. Primitive is infamous throughout the entire universe. And his name isn't even Dr. Primitive. People just call him that because that's his crime. He turns people into monkeys. He's known by his crimes against humanity, which goes hard, by the way. Okay, so we know he turns people into monkeys, but why can't anyone catch him? He's just one guy. And every planet he strikes, it's obvious who did it. But what the game doesn't tell you is actually hidden in the description of the quantum damage boots that have been in the game since day one, which tells you that Dr. Primitive discovered gravity capture technology and applied it to skates. So this guy speed skates through space, turning people into monkeys. Why doesn't anyone know this? This is the best thing ever, and no one has ever brought it up. There are so many amazing things about this game, and all of it either gets ignored or glossed over without the best parts being able to shine. No one knows that the propagation fought 7 aeons and nearly won. And Tezeront, the aeon of propagation, is still alive. And the remains that Locha has in his coffin is probably just one of its many shells, because it was able to replicate itself over and over and over again. Not enough people know that Herta fought against the Antimatter Legion 19 times and won every single time. She is 19-0. No one knows that Ron May revived another genius, but that same genius decided to cease to exist, which is a contradiction to what she told Ting Yun. So Ting Yun wouldn't have been the exception because the exception already happened. So you wouldn't know that Ron May wanted Ting Yun to live, so she lied to her to try to convince her to stay alive. I bet that whole interaction feels different to you now, doesn't it? Not enough people know about Aha's Noblesse Worm, the single most hilarious thing that is entirely canon to the lore. And I will pin the comment of the first person that explains what happened, because I know my subscribers know this, because you guys are built different. What I mean to say is this: I love this game's lore. It is gritty, dark, and disgusting and hilarious all at the same time. And I could go on for way longer than this, yapping about the details in the story that have yet to be addressed that subtract from the impact the story events have. I don't complain very often. In fact, this is my first video complaining about anything. But this is the one thing that just gets on my nerves that no one in the community seems to be addressing. So I'll take it upon myself to do so. In the end, I just want more people to enjoy the story to the fullest, and what we've been getting just isn't cutting it for me. And I get it. Every planet has their own systems and their own rules and cultures that need to be fleshed out. And I think Hoyo is doing a great job of that. Every planet feels unique and special, but the problem lies in the fact that we need to know what we're fighting or what anyone else is fighting. We didn't know we were fighting a Stellaron-fused Cocolia until the very end. We didn't know Fantilia was behind the Shinjo crisis until the very end. We had no clue what was going on in Penacony at all until the very end. And we still don't know what the Black Tide is in Emphorius. But you know what? They nailed the wardance story. The wardance story hit different. And you know why? It's because we knew what we were fighting. We knew Hoolay was the big bad from the jump. We knew what he was doing. We saw how bad he was, but we didn't know how we were gonna beat him until we beat him. It was absolute cinema. We heard about how bad the Borison were. I mean, we know Blade's backstory. His entire planet was destroyed by Borison. But until we saw Hoolay leaving trails of bodies in his wake, you gotta admit that that hit different. When he crushed Shui in the palm of his hand, it hit different. When he did this to Chow Chow, it hit different. Now imagine if all of this was just packed into some text on a page or some obscure scroll that you have to find and read through, or it's all off screen. It wouldn't be nearly as good. Like, I'll give an example. Nikador. What did Nikador do wrong? Yeah, he was mad, but what did he do? He was just kind of sitting there by himself, chilling there when we attacked him. Apparently he was mad, but what did he do? Send some minions to attack Akema? Fire off a laser that didn't even end up connecting? So what? Hoolay is over here drinking people's blood. It's gotten so bad that I'm starting to feel bad for the Titans. Are we the bad guys? The Time Titan is out here crying out in pain, begging us to leave, looking for its mother. Establish and develop the villain, Hoyo. I know y'all can do it. Stop holding out on us. I'm sure you guys get it by now. On a selfish note, this narrative weakness gives me more things to talk about in videos. But what do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace, y'all.